Houthi military spokesperson announces targeting of Israel's Nafatim air base in Naqab. White House National Security Commission's advisor John Kirby says the United States will continue strikes on Yemen's Houthis as long as threats persist. The Israeli military launches ground operation in Beit Hanun, targeting Hamas fighters and infrastructure. It's exactly 8 p.m. car local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Yemen. The Houthi military spokesperson has announced that the targeting of Israel's Nafatim air base in the region of Naqab. In a statement, the spokesperson confirmed the attack was carried out using a hypersonic ballistic missile. The Israeli military had earlier reported intercepting a missile launched from Yemen last night outside its borders. Sirens went off in several areas of Israel following the missile launch from Yemen. The Israeli occupation military confirmed its air defense system intercepted the missile outside the borders. Israeli media also reported that the Houthis have launched 10 missiles and 9 drones towards Israel since the beginning of this month. Israeli media outlets have reported that Israel is preparing to launch extensive military operations against the Houthis in Yemen, with the goal of weakening the group and targeting its leadership in response to their attacks. According to Israeli security sources, Israel proposed to the United States and other countries the idea of conducting joint operations against the Houthis, with estimates suggesting the campaign could last several weeks. The United States National Security Council's Strategic Communication Coordinator, John Kirby, has stated that the United States will continue strikes on Yemen's Houthis as long as their capabilities remain active. Kirby emphasized ongoing coordination with Israel to minimize damage to civilian infrastructure and casualties. He reiterated the Houthis pose a real threat to Israeli security by continuing to launch attacks on Israeli territory. World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom survived an airstrike on Yemen's main airport on Thursday. The attack, reportedly carried out by Israel, hit Sana'a International Airport, with Adhanom telling Reuters that the explosions were so intense his ears were still ringing. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, has recounted his harrowing experience surviving an airstrike at Yemen's Sana'a International Airport. The attack carried out by Israeli occupation forces was part of an ongoing operations targeting the Iran-aligned Houthi movement. Tedros described the chaos that unfolded, with people fleeing in panic after a series of explosions. One would struck alarmingly close to the airport's departure lounge where he was seated. He revealed that the blasts were so intense that his ears were still ringing more than 1 day later.
Necessary to provide humanitarian assistance in a way that doesn't just alleviate suffering.
United Nations aid official Julian Harnis has warned the damage to Sana'a Airport, a key hub for international aid workers, would cripple humanitarian operations. This followed Israeli airstrikes on targets in Yemen. Harnis stressed the obligation to avoid civilian targets, noting that the airport has not been used for military purposes since 2016. With over half of Yemen's population is in need of aid. He also highlighted the crucial role of the Houthi port in the food imports, emphasizing the severe impact of any potential damage.
International humanitarian aid workers who work in the north of the country come in and leave by. So if that airport is disabled...
And for more analysis on the situation, we now move on to Salma in our newsroom. Salma?
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis on the recent escalating tensions between Yemen's Houthis and Israel, we're joined from Cairo by the international relations expert, Mr. Ahmed Said Ahmed. Welcome to Q News, Mr. Ahmed. And let me start off by asking you, what are your thoughts on the Israeli airstrike on Sana'a airport and its implications for Yemen's humanitarian efforts?
My greetings to you and to all the viewers. In fact, the Israeli attacks on Yemen come after the Houthi group launched a number of ballistic missiles into the depth of Israel, and some of these missiles managed to go into the depth of Israel, especially in Tel Aviv, which has constituted a big blow to the concept of deterrence launched by Israel. And these attacks has driven Netanyahu and the far-right government to continue its plans to target what is called the Iranian axis after blows against Hezbollah and the Bashar al-Assad regime and the militias affiliated with Iran in Iraq. Now Netanyahu is trying to put attacks against the Houthis, but these attacks are not much affecting the Houthi capabilities, but it affects negatively the humanitarian situation and the Yemeni people who pay a very dear price for these conflicts and for these hits from Israel, especially that US and Britain for more than a year now, and since the formation of the most recent coalition, did not stop the Houthi attacks. So these Israeli attacks probably would affect the Houthis in a way, but this will not stop the launching of attacks by Houthis. The Yemeni people will pay a price for this.
Sir, can I also ask you please to share with us, how do you think the ongoing US and Israeli strikes against the Houthis impact regional stability?
For sure, these attacks by the US and by Israel will negatively affect the regional security, because it would heighten the dangers of more escalation in the region and threatening more peace and security in the region. Secondly, it would be leading to crippling the security of the Red Sea area. It will affect the international trade, especially that the US is continuing to threaten the Houthis of more military US military presence in the region. So the whole atmosphere is filled with these attacks and counterattacks, hits and counter-hits from Israel, US, and the US. This will all heighten the spread of a regional conflict and affecting the international trade in the Red Sea. So there is a need to stop all that escalation, because it is not only about targeting Yemen, but there is a need for stopping the Israeli aggression on Gaza and stopping the Israeli aggression on Syria and Lebanon. This is the thing that would lead to stopping the regional escalation. Yet Israel, US, and Britain are eager for more escalation to serve more Israeli objectives and Israeli interests.
Sir,
and the whole region is paying the price for this.
Sir, with Sana'a airport being damaged at the moment, what are the obstacles that are facing the humanitarian organizations they're facing now to deliver aid to Yemen?
for sure, the targeting of the Sana'a airport and stopping the navigation there would also be like targeting this and also targeting the head of the World Health Organization. This will give very negative repercussions on the humanitarian situation, because Sana'a airport has been the main venue for receiving the regional and international aid to the Yemenis. More than 80% of the Yemeni people are under the poverty line, and 70% are subjected to famine in Yemen. There is real dire situation humanitarian-wise in Yemen, and Hodeidah port as well were the other most important entry point for aid to Yemen. And these are the areas controlled by the Houthis. So hitting these areas will have more dire consequences on the humanitarian situation and blocking the entry of the humanitarian aid. And this will affect the Yemeni people who are already facing grave consequences since the start of the war in Yemen in 2015, and the rising number of displaced people and refugees, and the deterioration of the humanitarian and health situation, and the spread of some diseases like cholera and others. So these attacks will aggravate the situation of the humanitarian issue in Yemen.
Sir, and how do you think the Houthi missile attacks on Israel, how will they shape the overall security landscape in the Middle East?
In my own belief, I believe that the Houthi attacks on Israel is coming within the context of the conflict between Israel and the United States on one side and Iran and its allies on the other. So Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the militias in Iraq, and the different groups as well as Hezbollah of Iraq, it's an ongoing conflict, and Israel is trying to blow this axis, pro-Iran axis, and as Netanyahu said, he wants to change the equations in the Middle East and change the map of the Middle East. So also the fall of the Bashar Assad regime and the decline of the Iranian influence in Syria and also in Lebanon after the attacks on Hezbollah is changing the equation in the region. Therefore, the attacks by Houthi and the Iranian support to the Houthi attacks is trying to keep some kind of deterrence between Iran and Israel, and to show Iran as capable of hitting Israel and Houthis capable of hitting Israel. But this will eventually lead to more escalation and the possibility of a direct war between Iran and Israel and the United States, especially when Trump comes to office, who is taking a very strict policies against Iran and the Houthis. So there is more possibility of aggravation of this conflict in the near future.
And what do you think, Mr. Ahmed, in your opinion, are the steps that the international community can take to mediate the Yemen conflict and minimize civilian suffering?
In my belief, the international community has to move and has to act to allow more entry of aid to Yemen, especially under the dire humanitarian situation. And also the international community needs to move to resolve the situation in Yemen through a political solution and implement the UN Security Council Resolution 2216 and supporting the legitimacy in Yemen, because the lack of a political solution in Yemen will get Yemen to be nothing but part of the regional conflict, while the Yemeni people pay the price. The international community also needs to move for enhancing, helping the humanitarian situation in Yemen, and do that by stopping the war in Gaza and stopping the Israeli aggressions. And I think these three tracks might be the way out for this crisis, because the open-ended war between Israel, United States, and the Britain against Houthis, Iran, and the other parties will not end. And under the dire humanitarian situation, the international community should pressure Israel and the United States not to attack the civilian facilities and to ensure the entry of more humanitarian aid and to move for a resolution of the situation in Yemen under the UN Security Council resolutions that deal with this situation.
Well, that was the international relations expert, Mr. Ahmed Saeed Ahmed. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And we're back to you again, Rana.
Thank you, Salman. Now we move on to the latest developments in Gaza. The Israeli military has launched a ground operation in Beit Hanun, northern Gaza, accompanied by artillery and airstrikes targeting alleged Hamas fighters and infrastructure. Military spokesperson Daniel Hagari stated that the Nahl Brigade carried out the overnight operation guided by intelligence. The military claims to offensive aims to enhance security for areas near Gaza. Airstrikes reportedly struck alleged Hamas positions, with the army asserting that civilians were permitted to evacuate during the operation. The Israeli army has detained the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, burned sections of its facilities, and destroyed all generators, further deepening the healthcare crisis in the region. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has issued an urgent appeal for international intervention to sustain medical services amid the escalating situation. Israeli forces, meanwhile, continued their relentless attacks for the 449th consecutive day, resulting in severe humanitarian conditions and the displacement of 95% of Gaza's residents. The European Union's Commissioner for Equality and Crisis Management, Hadja Al Habib, has condemned the Israeli forces for reportedly burning Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. In a statement on the platform X, Al Habib described the partial destruction of the region's last major hospital as unacceptable and highlighted the forced evacuation of patients and staff. She also stressed that targeting medical facilities violates international humanitarian law and called for an immediate delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza. The World Health Organization has confirmed that an Israeli attack on Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza has destroyed the region's last major health facility. The WHO warned that the systematic destruction of Gaza's healthcare infrastructure is leaving thousands of Palestinians without access to life-saving care. The attack reportedly caused severe damage to critical hospital sections. 60 paramedics and 25 critically ill patients remain at the site, while others have been evacuated to the already damaged Indonesian hospital, heightening concerns over their safety amid ongoing violence. Hamas has condemned the Israeli army's raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, calling it a war crime. Hamas held the Israeli occupation and the U.S. administration responsible for the safety of patients and medical staff. Hamas urged the international community to break the silence and impotence surrounding the genocide in Gaza, demanding actions to stop an aggression and hold Israel accountable. And now we move on to the latest developments in Syria. The Syrian Military Operations Command has announced the establishment of a military checkpoint near the gate of the Hamimim military airport, which is used by Russia as a base in the rural area of Latakia. The military administration in Syria denied circulating reports about the entry of Military Operations Command forces into the Russian Hamimim base in the Latakia countryside and the arrest of several Syrian officers. The Syrian embassy in Beirut has announced the suspension of consular services until further notice. The embassy has urged the expatriates in Lebanon to follow its official page for important updates regarding the resumption of consular services. Russian intelligence has accused United States and United Kingdom agents of planning attacks on Russian military bases in Syria. Russian intelligence also stated that the United States and the United Kingdom aim to prevent stability in Syria and also make chaos in the Middle East to achieve long-term geopolitical dominance in the region. Syria's military operations chief Ahmed al-Shara has met with Bahraini delegation led by head of Bahrain's Strategic Security Agency, Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Al Khalifa in Damascus. Bahrain emphasized its support for Syria's security and stability, pledging assistance in facilitating the return of refugees. This visit follows a series of high-level engagements between Syria's new administration and international officials after the recent political shift, marking significant changes in diplomatic relations. The Syrian news agency has reported that the Military Operations Administration sent reinforcements to the Homs countryside to pursue elements of the former regime and restore security. They also began combining operations in Deir ez-Zor. Earlier, the United Nations Security Council called for a Syrian-led political process respecting Syria's right and sovereignty. Turkish Interior Minister has announced that nearly 31,000 Syrians have returned to their homeland, marking an increase of about 5,000 in just 3 days. Earlier on Tuesday, Turkish minister stated that more than 25,000 Syrians have returned and noted that Syrians would be allowed to leave and re-enter Turkey up to 3 times during the first half of the year 2025. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Houthi military spokesperson announcing targeting of Israel's Navatim airbase in Natim. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby says the United States will continue strikes on Yemen's Houthis as long as threats persist. And the Israeli military launches ground operations in Beit Hanun, targeting Hamas fighters and infrastructure. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.